Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for May 7th, 2024. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. And we're streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by talking about last week's Weekly Tittle, which was called Note to Self. The assignment is to offer a word of decluttering advice to your younger self. Let's hear from our participants live in Zoom and on Facebook. Who sent a message to their younger self this week? Please let us know in the comments. I did not find any emails or comments this week that specifically addressed the tittle, but we received a very thoughtful comment from YouTube viewer Ms. Leanite that I'd like to share. Ms. Leanite writes, "Thank you for another great episode, Gayle and Ed. I was gobsmacked by the observation that our giveaway/recycle stuff is not a cat, so we don't have to find it a good home." That was a great quote.
It
Can't
was a great
remember
quote.
if we got an attribution on that quote. They might have been crediting that one to Andrew Mellon. I'm not sure.
Okay.
If anybody knows, let us know. Anyway, Ms. Leanite goes on to say, but then I wondered if all of our stuff is like pets, not just the stuff we're willing to jettison. Are these piles of paper and boxes of junk my pets? People who love their pets believe the pets love them back. Do we love our stuff? We don't believe our stuff loves us, yet we get some kind of emotional nourishment from owning it. The poor folks who end up hoarding animals are those who started out with pets they loved, but have gone into a state of overwhelm where they really can't give the animals good care and have become helpless to take effective measures to deal with the situation. They know the animals are suffering, but they cry from shame and distress when people come to take the animals away. I think I would have a similar reaction if people, however kind and sensitive, were to come here to help me go through all this stuff, sort, toss, rehome, clean, etc. Maybe when it was all done, I would feel a tremendous sense of relief and gratitude, but it would be hell while it was happening. Thank you for listening.
I wanted to quote one particular line that she put in there that I thought was very important. She says, "We don't believe our stuff loves us, yet we get some kind of emotional nourishment from owning it." I think this is a really wise observation. We do get some kind of emotional support from owning our stuff. It makes us feel all kinds of things: protected, important, supported, connected to others through memories. We sometimes get lost in the volume of things that we hold on to when half the things could be removed and we would still get all those feelings from the half we keep. If you recognize that your things give you emotional support of some kind, then you can ask yourself, how much of the stuff I have is needed to let me feel supported? Would I really feel less supported if I own less? Or could I keep the most emotionally resonant things and let some of the excess filler go away? And I just thought that was a thought that we could all use less to manage. And thinking about it in that way, they aren't really our pets. This stuff doesn't really love us back. There is an emotional connection to some of it, but we don't need 100% of what we own to still feel that emotional connection. And maybe we can thin it down to the things with the most important attachment for us and let some of the filler go. Just wanted to throw that out there. And thank you for Ms. Leanat for writing us such a long and thoughtful response. It's very interesting.
Jane in California says that the quote about your stuff is not a cat is from Cass from Clutterbug.
Oh, okay,
She
cool.
said in
Thank you.
an all day declutter event. She had said it to a client and repeated it in the all day declutter that Jane participated in, I think.
All right, great. Thanks for keeping us up on that.
CJ says on the tittle, CJ says, I used up or discarded some stuff that my younger self put aside temporarily, and then life got in the way of completing the task as intended. Emptied four big plastic storage bins and removed a bunch of more cardboard boxes.
Excellent. That's good. Sometimes, those projects that get interrupted, and then if you have room and you don't have to look at them, you can hide the unfinished project somewhere, and then 5 years goes by or 10 years goes by, and suddenly you remember, oh, I never did finish that. I just shoved that in the closet over there. It's a good time to go clean it out.
CJ added, I was kind and non-judgmental to my younger self with regard to the hardships that life put in the way of completion.
There you
Excellent.
go.
That was an important part of the assignment.
Yes, it was.
Really
and it's,
is.
yeah, there's no point in going back and beating yourself up over something that's long water under the bridge. So good for you. And you still got it done, and you didn't take on any kind of bad feelings about it. You just went and did the work when it was time to do the work. And so good for you. You made it.
Here's a really good one from M. The advice is keep a diary and pictures so that you don't feel like you need to keep stuff.
There you go. And actually, that would be a good coping mechanism if you're trying to get rid of stuff. You can write down some of the things that you're feeling and thinking about the things, and add pictures in, and still let go of the stuff. It might be a way to allow you to let go of things if you take the picture, write the note about it, so that you have the memory and you don't have to keep the thing. It might be a good bridge if you particularly like to write. Not everybody does, but if it's something that you like to do, it's a good way to deal with it.
Beth in Houston says, my message to my younger self would be not to accumulate so much stuff.
Right? Like, slow it down. Slow down acquisition. That is a good message to a younger self. We probably wouldn't have listened, though.
No, right?
Yeah, the younger version of us would be like, yeah, whatever. We always thought we knew better back then, right?
I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your advice to your younger self regarding, in this narrow realm? I know there's probably lots of advice you give your younger self in a lot of areas, but specifically about clutter and stuff.
Yeah, I think that for me, the idea of buying something because you want it without having the financial resources for it was a big, it took me a while to learn that lesson, that it wasn't worth the money, and then the interest on the money that it took to pay off the money for you to have the thing right now. And it was, as I look back, acquiring this stuff at a rate that was inappropriate to my income stream was a costly mistake.
Yeah.
That I should have listened to myself earlier about that.
Well, and there's so much stuff you can look back on and go, I was still paying for that after it went
5
out
years
the
later.
door, after I consumed it, threw it away, broke it, etc. And then I was still paying the bill.
And I think about how many back in the day, how many meals got charged to credit.
Oh my gosh.
Like, yeah, that food is long gone. By the time I start paying on that food, like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Here's a really good one. Julie says, I would tell my younger self to cull the photos every year instead of throwing them all in a box and procrastinating.
Oh, that's an excellent one. Oh my gosh, that is so good, because it would spread the work out, and it would get rid of photos that nobody else has to come behind you and see those photos and wonder why you kept them, when really why you kept them was you couldn't be bothered to look in them. So great. That's a great one. Just deal with your photos every year.
And M added on the subject of photos, mother told me, and I didn't listen, label every photo as soon as you get it, because you will forget.
Right? You will forget. That is so true. You think you're not going to, but how many times have you pulled out photos and gone, who are these people? Like, I know I'm in this room here, but I don't know who these people are. Yeah, sometimes it just goes.
You'd think it would be easier now that we can review the photos immediately the same day. And, several of our regular participants have mentioned having having a routine for their photos, and I really applaud that behavior, and I should do
So
it
it's a great
myself.
habit, right?
Yeah, like every day just sit down and look at the photos you took yesterday and delete the ones that were, here's where this idiot parked funny and I wanted to take a picture of it, or here, here's this here's this pretty tree I saw that it struck me, so I took a photo of it, and I'm not sure that I need to keep this photo forever.
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
know
Exactly.
Joyce added, I wish I'd labeled my photos. Should have listened to grandma. I used to bust her chops all the time for labeling everything. And Rowan added, I have no photo problem because I have no smartphone.
Oh, there you go. That solves your problem
That does.
100%.
Yeah, yep, that greatly simplifies the issue.
There is no gallery if you cannot take a picture with the phone. Good job.
All right, I think we should move on to our main topic,
Sir,
which
yes, sir.
is moving to a smaller home is a complex process that requires careful planning and tough decisions. But sooner or later, we all need to reduce our possessions, either to fit in a smaller space or so we can comfortably age in place. Today, we're going to explore the challenges of shifting to a smaller space, and we're going to try to apply downsizing lessons to right sizing the stuff in our cluttered homes.
We talk a lot about downsizing, but why do we have to downsize? We don't often cover that part. So we're going to start there today. What makes us say to ourselves, it's time to downsize my space? At the top of that list is a death in the family, typically a spouse, but maybe also a parent who had been living with you. Once a spouse is gone, often the spouse left behind can't manage the amount of space alone. It becomes too hard to clean it and maintain it and navigate it. Maybe the surviving spouse has health issues of their own and they need help taking care of themselves. That is a big trigger to downsize. Change in health status is an obvious one as well. Declining in health or mobility means you likely can't access attics or basements anymore. You can't get to other floors because of the stairs. If that's true for you, then why not get rid of the place with the attic and the basement or the multiple floors that you can't use? I have known a lot of clients who, when I come over to help them get ready to move, they're going to downsize, that their situation is shifting. And part of what I'm doing is I'm working on a floor that they haven't been able to go to in 10 years. And so I'm upstairs working on a second floor, and they haven't been up those stairs for a decade. They don't even remember what's up there anymore. And so there's often places that become inaccessible to you because of your health status. And so if you have some of those spaces that are truly not safe for you to get into anymore, or you could get into them, you couldn't get out of them. If you could get yourself up the stairs and then couldn't get back down again, like what would be the point, right? So that space now is wasted space for you, regardless of what's hiding in it. And why not get rid of that space? That's a good reason to downsize. Sometimes downsizing happens because of a job loss or some other income loss. When your income changes suddenly, affording a larger home can become an issue. A smaller place can relieve some of the pressure of changing finances. Think about a rent increase. That's a very specific one. When the rent grows beyond your budget, as is happening these days all over the place, downsizing is a solution to adjust to the current rental market. If you can't afford the size house that you're in right now, maybe you can stay in the market if you rent something that is smaller and less expensive. What about when a divorce happens? Splitting a family into two people again usually means funding two places to live, especially if there's kids still at home. What could work in terms of ownership or rental for two shared incomes now must be stretched to cover two households instead. And that often leads to downsizing in the living spaces, so that however you guys divvy up your finances, both houses can be covered and financed in your new lifestyle. Even if you're expecting to age in place, the reality of aging in place still needs a reduction in contents. As your health needs demand changes, you'll need to accommodate using a cane or a walker or maybe a hospital bed. You may need to provide living space for a caregiver or multiple caregivers. As a result, your access to space in the house will shrink as part of your space is given over to new things required of aging in place. Next, I want to cover the challenges of shifting to a smaller space. And truthfully, it can be summed up like this. Everything shrinks in size and capacity. Whether it's just a smaller square foot floor plan, or it's actually an independent or assisted living situation, or you've moved in to live with family at this stage in your life. First up is the smaller room sizes. Every room in the house gets smaller in a situation like this. Your kitchen is going to lose cabinets, or you're going to get smaller cabinets. The counters are going to be smaller, and sometimes you lose the pantry, which is a little odd, but you may lose the pantry or get a much smaller pantry. The bedrooms are smaller in square feet, of course, and so it can hold a bed, but often not a lot of excess in furniture. So nowadays, if you're living in a larger space and you have a really big bedroom, you may have a big bed, and you may have two dressers, and you may have a chair, and you may have a bench at the end of the bed, and there may be all this furniture in there with you. But usually when you downsize and the rooms get smaller, all that furniture can't go with. It won't all fit in the bedroom. The dining room, a separate dining room, separate living room, separate family room tend to become one room to function as a much smaller public living area. And so you end up with the bedroom half of the house and the living area half of the house. And it's not typically 3 separate rooms or 2 separate rooms. It's usually one now central area that is the living area, the public area where your family would be or visitors would come. It's all one central living space. You tend to lose extra rooms. The house is made of basically living areas only. So you lose the bonus room, you lose the utility room, a mud room, you lose extra guest rooms. If you have a spare office, the office is going to disappear probably. Basically, any kind of spare room is going to disappear in a downsizing situation. And if you go to assisted living or independent living, that is really true. You may have a 2-bedroom, but you'll have a 2-bedroom and 1 living room and a kitchen, and that's the end of your rooms. The laundry room stops being there, and you end up with a closet that has a washer and dryer in it instead. All of those living areas, all of the fluff in your living areas get subtracted as you downsize. You may have a smaller garage or absolutely no garage. So you might end up with a 1-car garage, or you end up with a garage that has no landing deck in front of the cars. If you think about when you come out of where the cars park, sometimes there's a step up and there's a platform in front. There's a space in front of the cars that is at towards the entry to the house. And that space is usually has cabinets on it, or has rooms for for you to put things to store there. The laundry might be out there as well. And in a downsized space, most of that excess is going to go away. So the landing deck is kind of disappears. There's likely no cabinets there, and there's no space for cabinets to be added. They basically take the garage down to the cars go in here, and nothing else is allowed to go in there. There's generally enough space for that, and that's it. And so that's a big change for a lot of people that have bigger garages. They have benches and they have tool decks, work surfaces, cabinets on the wall, all kinds of storage in there. And when you go to a smaller house or a assisted living situation, that garage becomes a completely different type of space. It functions in a completely different way. You're also going to lose closets all over the place. Instead of closets in every room, you might have one bigger closet in the master bedroom and one much smaller closet somewhere else. In essence, you lose all that extra storage space that you have in a bigger space. Closets are square footage eaters. And so when you have a limited amount of square feet to work with, closets are one of the things that get sacrificed. And all these changes in size and options have consequences for the stuff you own. You can't expect to take all your furniture with you because it cannot possibly fit in a new, smaller space. It would just be the wrong size in general. Things that work in a larger space, that work in a larger room, and that are spread out in a larger home away from each other will choke up a space when they're placed in smaller rooms and then placed together with other pieces that were in separate places before. And so you find that you take that extra big piece of furniture that worked in your extra big space and you try to put it in a smaller space, and it feels like it ate up half the room when you put it there. So it doesn't take long for you to realize that all of that furniture that you're living with, most of it won't translate to a smaller room in a smaller space because it's designed for bigger spaces. All those delayed decisions that are stored in various places around the old house will not fit in the available storage in the new space. You will have to jettison a majority of what is in storage spaces in your house now because there's no such space to park things in the new house. You know that you have a lot of stuff in lots of closets and in furniture and under things, and that you are not paying any attention to, that are being ignored and will not have an equivalent space to park. What you have in the basement and the attic isn't going to make it. Hardly anything will transfer from the garage. It almost all has to go. You'll have to rely on yard services to have and use equipment to handle your yard work, and forget about the camping gear and the exercise equipment and the unused furniture and the bikes and the holiday decor and all those tools out there. You got a million tools out there. There's almost never any place to put any kind of tool collection. No set of stuff will fit the same in the smaller space as well. So all of the systems that you have will need to be revamped to suit the new closets and the new cabinets and the new drawers, because they're not going to be the same volume. They're not going to be the same capacity. And what you created to manage the stuff in your house currently will not then find an equivalent parking space in the new space. It's all going to be smaller.
Before we get too far away from the topic of garages, Jane in California said, I downsized when I moved from Illinois to California due to costs. I expect to downsize again when I move to senior care eventually. As I've shared before, a friend moved into continuous care and told me the hardest area to downsize was the garage, non-existent in her new setting.
Yeah, exactly.
And she says, my garage is my continuing focus, so I won't have stuff to deal with that when I no longer have a garage.
That is super smart, because there's just no outdoor space that is the last place that things go to die. We talk about the garage being the last place that things go to die. And so it's where you store things you no longer want in the house, but you can't get yourself to get rid of. And guess what? There will be no such space in your new downsized space, and you're going to have to get rid of it. So it was going to be a big clean out. And it reflects the change in lifestyle, right? When you downsize, you usually end up with less yard or no yard. If you move into assisted living, your need to take care of a yard evaporates. And so there is all the things that are in the garage to help you with the outside of the house usually stop being your responsibility and aren't necessary anymore. And all of the things that you parked out there to get them out of the house without letting go of them is gone. I mean, you have no need for that, all that extra anymore, and no space to put it. So you're going to find yourself shedding like mad as you get ready to downsize.
Paula commented, I downsized to 1/4 the size of my previous home. I'm so happy in the smaller space and no stairs. Do miss the garage though. Parking outside sucks.
I know, right? Which is why you got to look for covered parking. Or
Paula is in New Mexico, so those of us from Texas understand why she says parking outside sucks, because
parking outside is brutal.
It is brutal.
Generally, this means a reduction in volume of any type of stuff you have in your life. For example, there is no space for backstock. So that whole going to Costco and buying 47 paper towels and then bringing it home and finding some place to park it, there's no room for that. You don't have the storage for that. You barely have the storage for the stuff that you actively use. So the idea of maintaining backstocks and things is a big shift in lifestyle that you have to make. There's less room for spices. There's less room for makeup, linens, bath products, pantry items, shoes, coats, appliances, kitchen appliances in particular, dishes. All collections of any nature will have to be reduced to an essential subset of what you have now. I mean, imagine that your kitchen counter is cut in half. Well, how many things you have sitting on the kitchen counter that you Like, here's the microwave, here's the toaster oven, here's the mixer, here's the can opener, here, whatever, fill in the blank, right? You have a million appliances sitting out on counter space because you have counter space. But imagine if you didn't have that counter space. Well, you don't have the cabinet space either. So it's not like you can move it from the counter into a cabinet because you have limited cabinet space already. And you're going to have to use that for the stuff that you need to cook with. So hiding appliances in the cabinet is not going to be a good solution. It's going to use up too much valuable cabinet space for you. So in general, like I said, you're just going to have to reduce the volume of any type of stuff that you have in your life because there's not going to be space for it all. And you don't want to crowbar yourself into a new space and make it super tight and difficult to find things because everything is totally full. So reduce the volume is one of the biggest consequences of downsizing.
Janice says, "Ugh, Gayle, you're killing me. I just retired and love all my stuff, yard work, gardening tools, foodie kitchen gadgets, etc. I am 66 years old, and this is a whole new world of fun right now while I have my health. You sobered me up to reducing volume, however."
Well, and so I expect that you want to have fun, and I appreciate that you want to have fun, and you have earned having fun, right? You've retired, it's time. And so just think of it as dialing back the amount of things that you have to have fun with. You don't have to keep 100% of what you have. You can keep 70% or 50% and still have the fun. So the trick will be to see how much you can get away with without having everything. You don't need it all to have fun. I'm sure you can entertain yourself with a fraction of what you have.
Well, and she made a good point. Right now, while a whole new world of fun right now while I have my health.
Exactly right. So you want to be having a good time, and you want to be thinning the herd now while it's not painful, while it's not suffering. And so, while it's possible, like you said, while you have your health and it's easy to do.
While it's only emotionally painful and not also physically
Painful. Yes,
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Okay, so let's apply downsizing lessons to right sizing our stuff where we are right now, even if we are downsizing. If you have a large and sufficient home now, stuffing the house and all its storage capacity is going to backfire in the long run. Just because you have storage doesn't mean you have to fill it. And if you fill it all, then downsizing becomes a big reduction job. And it'll likely be giving away more than half of what you own. All those things that you've hidden from yourself all over the house will not find equivalent storage in the new space. It likely won't find any storage space at all in the new place. So why not reduce what you own to the essentials now in your current space, leaving lots of storage spaces empty, lots of cabinets and drawers with vastly less items in them, nothing overcrowded or overstuffed, nothing hanging out there just in case I need it. What you gain from that is the home becomes easier to manage and to clean. Items become easy to find, and it's obvious when you don't have something that you need. It's important to figure out what the cream of the crop is for any collection you have and what is just excess variety that feels comfortable to you. You don't really need all that variety or volume. You just feel good about having it there. But if you kept the best parts and let the extra go, the weight of what you have would be so much easier to manage, and you still have the best parts. It is a mindset shift. It is thinking about it from a different point of view. If you've never had to thin your belongings because you haven't moved very much, or because you inherited a bunch of stuff and you had the room to park it, or kids came and went from the house and emptied rooms, and then you had new rooms to put stuff in, like, if you just took advantage of what was available to you and delayed decisions and parked things in the space, you're going to have a big job to thin it out. And you got to start that sooner rather than later. And living with less will be 2 decades or 3 decades of stashing things in corners or putting things in cabinets or burying it in closets. Like, you took all those things there one at a time over 30 years or 20 years. And now you have to take it all back out. And it's going to take a while, and it's going to be a lot of work. But you certainly don't want to do it in a hurry. You certainly don't want to do it when you suddenly have a health crisis and you have to be moved immediately. And so use your good health, use your good physical capacity, and work on those things now so that it is not a crisis that you pass to your family when you require suddenly more care or intervention than you have before.
We're doing a sort of practice downsize right now in our pantry. I think I mentioned
Mm,
this in previous weeks. We shuffled some furniture around, got a new set of
right.
shelves to use as our pantry, and discovered that we still had way too much stuff. And it's a useful exercise. It's sort of forcing us to confront, lifestyle things, lifestyle choices, like the tendency to come home from the grocery store with the impulse purchases.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're at a point right now where, because we need to reduce the volume of our pantry, we're not allowing any impulse purchases. It's like, if it's not on the list, you're not allowed to buy something that goes in the pantry. That's that's
Ah,
that's the current rule we're operating under. And I think it's, really great practice. I don't know that our lease is up in about a year, and who knows what's going to happen with the crazy housing and rental market. We may, we've talked about how we would manage living in a, like a studio apartment,
right.
1 bedroom, 1 bath, and clearly our pantry would have to end up being
A bread box.
the things we're planning to eat this, for the next 2 days.
Right.
I think it's good exercise for everybody, even people who are planning to age in place, to at least conceptualize a need to downsize.
Yeah. Even if you don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah,
Right.
look around your place and say, will this still be comfortable when I have to use a cane or a walker or a wheelchair? Will this, you know, what else is going to stop working about the space I'm living in?
Right.
Naomi says, I downsized from a house to an apartment. I got to walk away from everything in the garage because I wasn't going to have to deal with yard anymore. I got to walk away from washer and dryer because there's a laundry room down the hall on every floor of this building.
Oh, that's helpful. That's two big appliances you don't have to worry about, and no flooding is going to happen from your washing machine if the washing machine is down the hall.
True.
That's excellent. I know it must be a hassle it must feel weird to walk down the hall to do laundry, but it is also that much space that you're not surrendering to a washer and dryer in your apartment. So that's kind of a good thing, I think.
Also, the repair of the washers and dryers becomes someone else's problem.
Right? Exactly.
All of the rental places that Jaime and I have lived in together have had washer and dryer. Mostly, they've had it in the unit. That the
Mm,
first place we lived, the washer and dryer were downstairs, which was effectively outdoors, which is
yeah.
not a situation that works very well in Houston, Texas,
No,
because
no, no, no.
the heat and humidity will destroy the appliances and anything else you keep outside very quickly.
And destroy your will to go outside and do
Oh my
laundry.
gosh, yes. Well, and since it was effectively, our laundry room was effectively outside, it was never very clean.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
matter how
yeah.
much you sweep or mop or dust, it never doesn't stay clean for very long, which meant if you dropped a piece of clean clothing, it had to go straight back into it'd be treated as dirty.
Right, that was the end of that. Oh, that's so true.
Samudra says, I realized I have exactly twice as much as I need, one in
Oh.
use, one for backup,
Mm.
rotated. Rowan said, for me, I'm continuously thinking about, what does need really mean for my life? That's a very good point, because for all of us who are fortunate enough to have, some discretion, enough money to make choices based on more than just need, but also
Hmm.
want. It's really easy to get in the trap of thinking everything you want is something you need.
Right? Yeah, and a lot of times we're just blowing smoke. It's not really true. We don't need it. We just want it.
Paula says, every time Ed says he got rid of his printer, I shake my head. I use mine all the time. Therefore, I need it. I'm probably
What?
way more analog than he is.
That's okay. If it's an appliance that gets used, that's one of the filters for why it gets to stay, right?
Yeah,
If it was
definitely.
sitting there not getting used, then we would be having a different discussion. But if you're using it, then it's okay.
Naomi added, the laundry room down the hall is no further than the basement laundry room in our previous two-story house.
There you go. You have to go down the basement or walk down the hall. Excellent. And you know what? It's probably the temperature in the one down the hall is probably better than the temperature was in the basement. So I'm guessing you like it better.
Ginger says, on the subject of pantries and grocery, I keep a grocery inventory in my phone. If we're out of an item, I put an X by it. I build my menu and grocery list based on this. Once I built it, it's been easy to keep up. Since then, we tend to keep the fridge organized. I have my inventory listed by the place it's stored. For example, fridge, refrigerator, deli drawer.
See, you can adjust to living in a different way. We just often don't challenge ourselves to do it.
Let's talk about next week. We
Okay.
do not have a topic yet, but we will be back next week. That is May 14th at the usual time,
Mhm.
noon US Central Time. Watch your email for an announcement of that. And let's go ahead and talk about the tittle.
Okay, this week's title is trial downsize. This week's assignment is to view your space through a downsizing lens to look for opportunities to reduce your clutter. So imagine a situation in which you would have to fit all of your current possessions into a significantly smaller living space. Now do a walkthrough of your home, making a list of any large items, furniture, storage containers, or collections of stuff that would be difficult to accommodate in a reduced space. And for each item on your list, assign a grade or a score for how important it is to you to keep this object in your imaginary downsized space. Now consider the item or items that scored the lowest on your list and reflect on whether you're ready to let go of any of them, or at least make a plan for how you dispose of them in the event of an actual downsizing move. Give yourself a little preview of what it might be to downsize, to age in place and make space for that. And then come and tell us about it. Let us know what you discovered when you started thinking about it.
I have a very special announcement I almost forgot.
Okay.
We want to say a special thank you to Therese Marie. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, for becoming our newest Patreon supporter.
Thank you, Therese Marie.
If you would like to help support our efforts with a recurring monthly donation of any size, please visit cfhou.com/Patreon. That's Patreon for anyone who's
Right.
listening rather than watching. Your contributions help us offset the cost of producing the weekly webcast and will help us fund other projects that we have in the works. Thank you for your support, Therese Marie, and all our generous underwriters.
We appreciate you so much. We really do. Thank you.
We have time for a few more comments. I want to share this one from Maureen, who's watching on Facebook. She says, such a timely topic, Gayle and Ed. A neighbor who recently placed her name on a retirement community housing wait list told me, we want to be proactive, not reactive.
Mm.
Think that applies to all our belongings as we get older, too. Recently, I had a bit of a health scare. All turned out fine, fortunately, but it made me realize I needed to be proactive and not leave the reactive part of going through all that's in our basement and garage to the kids. How in the world long would it take them? What's the average time it takes your clients, Gayle, to prepare for a downsize?
So the most thorough one I did, we spent 15 months with me coming to their house once every 3 weeks, basically. And we did that for 15 months. So I came and worked for them for 3 hours. And the husband had a back issue, so he couldn't stay with us for the whole 3 hours. She was able to hang out for the 3 hours. But of course, when I was done with them, they were exhausted. And every time I left the house, my car was full to the brim of stuff that they were letting go. And then we had 2 different times that a separate donation service came and picked up books. And then there was a separate garage clean out that I was not a part of. They hired somebody to come and clean out the garage because they were moving from a regular single family dwelling to renting in an independent living space, a high rise that was an apartment. And so that was a perfect example of everything in the garage needed to go because there was nothing, there was no place to put any of that stuff in the new place. And so we spent 15 months going all the way around the house and making choices about what would go to the apartment and what wouldn't. And the wife had been a librarian. And so she had bought all these paperback books to read, that she collected them while she was working to read in her retirement, which she did. She had read them all, but she had a whole library in the house. And it was like, yeah, there was no place there was no library space in a new apartment in their downsizing situation. There was just having that collection that had been important to her all of her working career, and after in her early retirement, having that collection became not needed, not good use of space, not necessary. And it didn't stop her from reading, of course. She still pursued and did reading, but it was absolutely a collection and a part of her lifestyle that completely flipped when she moved to the assisted living place. And so we jettisoned unbelievable amounts of books. Here, Frankie says hello. He's joining us to complain. So that one was sort of typical. I would say that most of the time, making your way around an entire house and going through all of the collections and all the cabinets and opening all the closets and getting through everything, it does take, if you do it in a regular manner, it'll take at least a year to get all the way around, and maybe more depending on, if you have a 2-story house and 4 bedrooms instead of regular 1-floor house and 2 bedrooms, it's going to be a bigger, you have double the problem, right? You've been stashing more. So if you know about yourself that you've been stashing in all available storage spaces for a long time, then you can just expect that it's going to take a lot of time to unwind that. And there isn't any fast way to do it physically, unless you pay somebody to come in and haul it all out with a team, and your ability to look at it or filter through it or think about it or make choice decisions about this piece is more important to me and this piece is less important to me. That ability to filter by degree and level of attachment or importance goes out the window when you have a bunch of people coming to do it for you in a hurry. So if you want to be thorough about your choices and you want to be considerate in what you do, Frankie has so many things to say today. If you want to be considerate, be able to consider your choices as you go, you're going to need time to do that. And you're going to find unbelievable amounts of things that you have long since forgotten were there. And you're going to be like, oh, I remember this. This was so cool. This was so cute. This was so interesting. This was so fun. Like, you're going to go off down memory lane a lot while you do this. And so that all requires a bunch of time. And we know what it's like. All of us have started to do something and gotten distracted and drifted off into thinking about all of the things that the pieces remind you of, and waking up 2 hours later and going, oh, whoops, I wasn't intending to sit here and flip through all these photographs or look at all these box contents and do nothing. And the time went by. And so it is definitely, it requires a bunch of focused time. And the more time you want to make slow, considered decisions versus rapid decisions, the more time that you need. And so you guys are all working on these projects. You're all here because you have projects to work on. And so, how long it takes to go through the stuff, and doing that on a whole house basis is some significant time commitment. You're making a significant time commitment, but it can be happening and you can get it done, and the house isn't going anywhere. So mostly the house isn't going anywhere.
We
So,
hope.
yeah, right. So you can, work your way around at whatever speed you need to do. But Frankie is so chatty today. You going to tell everybody what to do? Yeah. He says, pay attention to me. Don't talk about decluttering.
Well, my parents' situation is a little bit of a cautionary tale, and they had done lots and lots of work to prepare for an eventual downsize. They moved from, I forget how many bedrooms their last house was, but they moved to a 2 bedroom, 2 bath in a sort of retirement community, one of those places where you pay a maintenance fee. I don't know what they called it, but they paid some kind of fee that covered landscaping work. Somebody came around and
Yeah,
mowed
yeah,
all
yeah.
the
They have
lawns at
the,
the same time, that sort of thing.
yeah,
Well,
it's usually
similar
like
to
a,
where your mom was
yeah, yeah,
in
a senior subdivision
right, right.
has that sort
And
of a yard backup.
they moved in there when they had been considering moving into independent living at a community, but the wait lists were terribly long. And then they'd been in this retirement community for quite a few years and had continued to downsize. Anytime anyone visited, it was, what do you want? What would you like to
Take it
take
away in
away
the
with
car
you?
when you leave.
Right. And so
I
we were
remember
all
that.
constantly taking stuff away. And then it still became kind of a fire drill because they found another community that looked good, and an opening came up fairly suddenly, and they had to make a quick choice and a relatively fast move. They had about, I think, 3 months to get ready for that move. And
And that's true a lot. Like there's wait lists to get into the places, and you don't know when your trigger is going to be. Your opportunity to get in may appear when you're not ready. And so part of getting ready to be able to make that jump is knowing, okay, we're on a wait list. We better start downsizing the stuff now because we don't know when when they're going to pull the trigger and say, okay, you've got a space available and you can get in now or not now. Like
yeah.
the opportunity may pass you by if you're not ready. We have one more comment that I wanted to read out loud, and
Oh,
I think it's important.
yeah, go ahead.
Bonnie wrote in one of our surveys that she asked if we had any tips for someone experiencing deep grief while downsizing. I expect it to age in place. And I suspect that she's likely talking about she and her spouse expected to age in place, and perhaps she's lost a spouse. So that situation is very hard. And being in that level of loss and grief is so energy sapping, and it slows everything down. And so it's hard to function when you're in deep grief, and it's hard to make good decisions when you're in deep grief. And so the idea of making a whole lot of decisions about what to keep and what to toss is a much more taxing situation for somebody in that place. So I would say, don't give yourself a hard time if you can't make all the decisions at once, or you're struggling with making some of those decisions. B, I would consider, if you have a time sensitive need to downsize, then I would consider putting some things in storage to deal with a couple of years down the road. Anything that you're having a hard time dealing with right now may need to wait until you're in a better emotional state. And that's not going to happen in a few weeks or a few months. It's going to take a while. So I think the idea of, it's one of the times when I think putting things in storage for a limited amount of time is a reasonable thing to do, because you're likely to make better choices and to be able to do it more effectively and more efficiently, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when you are feeling a little bit more like you've gotten used to and absorbed the loss a little bit more. And so if you can, consider putting some things in storage. And if you can't, I would certainly use the opportunity to recruit anybody to come and help you that can do some of the work for you. And if you can hire an organizer, let that organizer come and do some of the work for you, because that will make it a lot easier. And they can help you coach through some of the decision making that you're having to make. And they can remove things for you so that it is less of a burden to surrender things for you while you're already struggling with grief. And so we don't want to add to your grief if we don't have to. And if someone else can take things away, it'll make it easier for you to manage those things. I just wanted to throw out that little bit because she had asked specifically about it, and
Yeah.
it was appropriate to this conversation.
Yeah. And she didn't give any background. So
Yeah, we're speculating there,
we're
but
not sure what, or whether the downsizing itself is the source of grief, because
mm-hmm.
I mean, I could see that, being a source of grief if you're, suddenly told you got to get rid of half your stuff.
Right.
That itself could be the source of grief. And again, that if that's your situation, that may justify a year of a storage unit to give yourself time to process, so it's not all a big rush.
Right. And the only thing I'll say about that is you just want to be careful that you're not adding expense to your life and then never ever going to deal with the problem. And so if
Right,
it goes and
right.
it's off site and it's out of mind and you get charged for it without thinking about it, it may be a big pile of stuff that somebody else has to come behind and do for you if you don't go back and deal with it. So it's not a permanent parking space.
No,
It's a
right.
temporary parking space.
Yeah, we never advocate for keeping a storage unit indefinitely.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
a recipe for wasting a whole lot of money.
And a rabbit hole for the stuff to die in.
Beth says, sometimes I just feel like I want to rip the Band-Aid off and get rid of a
Mm.
bunch of stuff in one fast dump out without even going through it. But I think if I do, it would be emotionally traumatic.
It will come with the regrets that you can't resolve. If you realize after the fact, oh, I don't know where the blah, blah, blah is. Oh God, I wonder if it got thrown out with the other stuff. I wonder if it got tossed out with that in the things I didn't look through. And so the only way for you to be sure that nothing important goes out with the stuff that you don't care about is that you go through it all thoroughly. And so you do want to make sure that you don't leave yourself with that lingering worry that can never be fixed. Did I get rid of that thing by accident? And you can't ever answer that question. And so I get the shortcut version of let's just throw that box out without looking at it. I get it. But because of the nature of the way that people pack, because they throw things in a box in a hurry when they're trying to get out somewhere, when they're out of steam, when they're irritated about moving process, fill in the
Right.
blank about all the
When
things that are going on when you're packing
when the moving men are
at the
tapping their
door.
feet.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You are throwing things
Or the party
around.
guests are tapping their feet and you're,
All right. You're trying to clear
hiding.
things out of the way, right?
Yeah.
The nature of that packing behavior is such that there's no telling. You know what you think is in the box, but there's no telling what's actually in the box. And so you do need to at least go through and touch everything and say, yes, I confirm that what is in this box is what I thought was in this box. Or, oh no, look, there's the key to the car that I was missing. You never know what you're going to find. And over the years, I have found some crazy stuff in boxes that people assured me didn't need to be unpacked. And I'm like, no, we're opening the box first. Well, I'll take it out, but we're going to open the box first. And then I find something crazy that they were surprised. And so you don't want to have that unresolved regret on your hands. I don't know what actually went out. So I don't know if the thing that I'm looking for now got thrown away accidentally or not. And there's no way to prove it until you actually find it in the house, or you never find it in the house and then you wonder forever. So we don't want to have that experience, and we don't want important things going out with, into donation. So got to open the boxes.
M says, when my neighbor sees the boxes in my garage, he says I should throw them away without opening them, claiming that is what he did without consequences. Your answer should be, good for you. That's not going to work for me.
Thank you, no. Thank you, no. So he didn't have any consequences because he didn't remember what all was in there. And so that's okay.
Right.
If he didn't suffer by
He
it,
did it
fine,
without
but
consequences so
that he
far.
knows of. Right. So I know it's extra work, and I know that if you can only muster enough to let things, jump out. Yeah, sorry. I think you have to spend the time to
Better
look
to
through stuff
face
a
it.
little bit. Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
You guys are so good about that. You're so great about leaving us comments everywhere and very thoughtful things about what's going on with you and your experience of the decluttering and organizing process. And we so appreciate that you share all of your insight and your thoughts and questions and concerns and issues, because they really help us work on the show. So we appreciate that you reach out to us and all the places that you do. And we'll always be looking at them and checking them out and finding out what you have to say. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.